I wasn't questioning a thing. He had manipulated my mind to believe that this is just what's happening right now and I'm going to go with it. This thing had happened. It'd gone on for 2 years. It got very horrific when we look at it now as an adult, some of the things that we were doing. He taught me how to kiss, how to masturbate him, how to masturbate myself. We were completely naked doing all of these things. And they would happen when everybody else was out of the house. And I believe they would even happen sometimes when people were downstairs. It was always my aim to let my parents go to their grave never finding out what had happened, because they trusted this man and brought him into the house. And as a parent, which I'm going to be soon, I'm pretty sure I will understand this even deeper. You will feel like you failed your children. And I didn't want my parents to go through that, because none of this is anyone's fault except for the man that did it. How do we get outside of those survivor circles? That's the big question. That is $1 million question with a society that doesn't want to talk about it. How are you going to create something like your movement? How are you going to create something where people go into work the next day and when they're making coffee, they're like, I saw this thing yesterday, right? It's about sexual abuse, but hold on. It was so interesting. You've got to see it. That's the attitude that we want. Not, I just don't want to talk about it. I'm going to look the other way.
Hoping for a change, but everything's the same. It's still the same. I'm running out of things to say. I need it yesterday. Oh, still I fall again and again. Oh, can I afford to cry? I paid the price for every lie. And I, for an eye, oh why? Oh why?
Hello, I'm Craig, and welcome to A Conversation With, a monthly program devoted to education about and healing from the trauma caused by sexual abuse, presented by Voices Beyond Assault.
And I'm Lorward. As most of us here today, Craig and I are also survivors of sexual abuse. Voices Beyond Assault presents these programs because we understand that men and women who suffer sexual assault are not always heard. We want to amplify their voices, empower them to heal, and provide the resources needed.
And as such, we'd like to first remind you that this program will contain discussions about emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, and may also include explicit language. While today's program puts a spotlight on the healing journey specific to men, sexual assault and abuse is prevalent among all human beings, and our programs are all inclusive.
Today, we have the pleasure and fortunate guest of Jeremy Indika. Jeremy was sexually abused for 2 years, beginning when he was 8 years old. He now speaks publicly about his experience to break the silence that keeps this crime hidden.
With his presentations in schools, a YouTube channel with over 28,000 subscribers, and a podcast, he is communicating this topic in a unique way. He has also founded a platform called Something to Say to give others the space to share their story. He won't stop until this subject is on everyone's table. Jeremy is based in the UK, but his work is indeed universal.
Jeremy, we just want to thank you one more time for spending time with us today. We want to especially thank you for all this work that you're doing. We have so much of your life and your story that we're going to go through, and your impacts not only in the UK, but abroad and beyond. And we're just so thankful for you to be on here.
Thank you. Thank you for that very nice introduction as well.
Let's go ahead and start at the beginning of your story. What was life like in your family prior to till up about 8 to 10 years old?
So my family environment and the family home that was created had its problems, as all families do. It had its successes as well. It was immigrant parents, both hardworking parents, and were focused on bringing their children up, myself, and put a lot of effort into that and supported me entirely. It was just that somebody managed to get access to me through childcare, family friend, trusted member of the family, trusted family friend, and that's when all of this started to begin.
So can you tell us about how that began and how this person got to you, groomed you, and then what happened is in as much as you want to share.
So I think it's really interesting to mention that actually I can't explain the grooming process because I don't remember it actually happening. I don't remember the stages of anything. I don't remember anything to do with leading me up to the actual acts of sexual abuse that were being done to me by this man. And I suppose that highlights to us how clever that grooming process really is, how sophisticated it is. And that's exactly what it's aiming to do, isn't it? To creep up on the child without the child realizing that they're being groomed. Of course, if somebody was to aim to groom a child and they were being alarming or making the child feel very uncomfortable, then the child's more likely going to say something. So the man that did this to me, he didn't do any of that. It was slow. It must have been progressive. As I said, until we got to these sexual abuse acts where I wasn't questioning a thing, he had manipulated my mind to believe that this is just what's happening right now and I'm going to go with it. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't show any signs to anybody at that time. And his secret was kept well hidden.
And this went on for how long?
Approximately 2 years now. I actually need to investigate the exact timings of this because there are some records of how often he was round. I'm still trying to search for them now. There's some complications with me finding them, as I'll tell you as the story unfolds. But yeah, I believe it was approximately 2 years.
So you're pretty young when this starts happening to you. It goes on for 2 years. It stops. How did you move on? What did you do next? Like, what's happening for you?
It's so crazy to think about that because I just continued like I always had been living my life. To the outside people, I was confident, outspoken, energetic, very sociable at school. And it's not actually, I just said to the outside people, that is actually just how I was. This thing had happened. It'd gone on for 2 years. It got very horrific when we look at it now as an adult, some of the things that we were doing. He taught me how to kiss, how to masturbate him, how to masturbate myself. We were completely naked doing all of these things. And they would happen when everybody else was out of the house. And I believe they would even happen sometimes when people were downstairs and we were upstairs playing computer games in the spare room, for example. And I just continued my life, moved into my teenage years, and still nobody knew what was going on because I didn't fit the stereotype. A lot of people think that if a child has been sexually abused, which I know happens in some circumstances, the child regresses, the child can't make friends, the child's misbehaving in school. Now, look, I was misbehaving in school. I was a mischievous young boy, but it was nothing that was like crazily alarming to anybody. And so all of this was going unnoticed. Now, in my early teenage years,
Well,
when,
I want to
please,
stop you for a second
please.
because I think it's important to when you were going on as if after this abuse ended, and I wonder how it ended, but when it ended, did you still have it in your mind or did you bury it and it as far as you were concerned in your present mental state, it never happened?
Absolutely. And that was the case. Buried it so deep that it never entered my head. And as you said, very, very accurately, I was living my life with that wasn't even in the forefront of my mind. I put it in a box, I'd locked that box and I'd thrown that box way behind me and never thought about it. Now, I believe during the times when I started getting with girls in my teenage years, I think I must have experienced some triggers
Hmm.
because my first kiss, for example, with a girl, there must have been something in my mind telling me, well, that's not the first time you've done that. But I'm so young at that point, early teenage years. There's no maturity or development in my brain to even start unpicking that. So it just lived there, right at the back of my mind.
So you never told anyone what happened because, I mean, when it ended, you were 10, you still a little child.
Mm.
So you probably didn't even realize that what had happened between you and this man was wrong.
I believe that it just wasn't even a thing for me to say anything. It wasn't anything that was like on my list of things to address, or it wasn't even in my mind like, oh, shall I tell someone that that happened? Actually, in that state, your brain is so clever. It's just it's buried it so deep. It's just not even on my horizon. Did I know that it was right? Did I know that it was wrong? I don't know because I wasn't even thinking about it. During the abuse, when it was actually happening, 8, 9, and 10 years old, did I know that it was right? Did I know that it was wrong? I don't think I knew either. I just knew that in some moments I felt very, very uncomfortable. And something in my heart was telling me that this wasn't the correct thing for us to be doing. But I was 8 years old in 1993. There was no education in schools, no conversations being had in homes in those days. So I didn't know any of the rules, body awareness, consent, boundaries on your body. I knew none of that. So realistically, I stood no chance.
Yeah, you don't even have the language to begin to describe what's happening to you. And because there's no conversations around you, you don't even have the context to be like, hey, this is something that's going on.
Yeah, I mean,
That
it's like, even if you think about, let's just take a situation outside of sexual abuse in someone's childhood. Let's say that you had a parent that physically abused you, they hit you and they hit you hard, right? Somewhere where it would leave bruises where no one else would see, or even maybe they didn't leave bruises, but they made you feel very fearful and very scared. Now, you think about what an 8-year-old actually is like, still playing with toys, very playful, innocent, very childlike. Even if you take that physical abuse situation, as adults, we're like, oh, the child would tell somebody if they were being hit at home. But actually, when you think about it, that child doesn't even know how to do that,
Yep.
right? They don't even know how, their brain doesn't even know that, oh, daddy really hits me hard. I better tell someone. It's not even a thought process. So then when you bring it back to this sexual abuse situation, which can be very confusing for a lot of children that go through it, meaning it's from somebody that's trusted in the family, it's from somebody in the family, or they've been told that this is something that they need and other children are doing it all in secret. It's like this thing is multifaceted.
Mhm. Yeah. I wanna move on a little bit. And so you're a kid, this thing happens, it's horrific, it's awful. You don't even have the language to begin to describe it, but you try and bury it deep. But like all things, it comes to the surface. And I believe you said sometime around when you're 25, it starts to come forth.
Yeah, I mean, life was going so well for me in my mid 20s. Throughout my 20s, I managed to get a successful career in engineering, and had great friends. Was out partying at the weekends, and then things just started to change. Where I started experiencing flashbacks. I started getting memories about what had happened. It was almost like it was showing itself in front of me, and I couldn't look the other way. And I started thinking to myself as I allowed myself to actually accept that that happened. I started thinking to myself, my goodness, that is so crazy. I can hardly believe it. I can actually hardly believe that that happened and that nothing has ever happened about it since up until now. I have not cared about it up until now, but now I care about it and something has changed. And that was all around 25 years old.
But it did come to your memory. You did have this view now. You remembered what happened. It broke out of its compartment at that point.
Absolutely. And then I started reflecting and I started remembering actually, let's say in my early 20s, 21 years old, for an example, I just remember a film being played at one of my mates' houses called Sleepers, which is an old school film about boys being abused in boarding school. And I remember that I made some weird excuse of why I needed to get home when the film started because I saw what it was about. And I think, So that was pre-25, but there were triggers there that were just pushing at those memories. But I didn't want to address them then, so I'd just forget about it. I also remember some cases coming up on the news that would just quickly, again, remind me of things, but I didn't want to address it at that time, so I just left it. But yeah, 25 was different, and I accepted that it happened, and I tried to ignore these memories because I didn't want them to manifest to anything. I didn't want to I didn't want this to be a part of my life. That was part of my past, so I tried to ignore it, but yeah, it didn't work. And
Did those memories make you feel any different about yourself, or feel like
mm,
you did something wrong, or how did you react to those memories?
I never went through that through those thought patterns of did I do something wrong? But I did start remembering that actually I was in on it too. Like I was cool with it. It was fine for me. You know, some of it was giving me caring feelings, attention. He must have been praising me. And I just think, oh wow, you were truly groomed. You were truly manipulated to think that actually we were doing something naughty that like maybe only older kids do, you know? And I started feeling sad for the 8-year-old boy that I was. That's
Mm.
really one of the strongest emotions that I felt. I just started feeling sad that he had gone through that on his own and not had the language or the knowledge to actually tell someone.
Mhm.
Yeah, any of the care that you needed when you were so young and so
Yeah.
vulnerable. I think that's, yeah, there's a lot of like self-compassion that we can exhibit to ourselves. So
Mm.
obviously you don't ignore these memories forever because
Mm.
otherwise we would not be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that transition look like for you? What do you end up deciding to do?
I I I feel like I got a really fortunate journey, you know, because I made the decision to tell someone for the first time. And I had these excellent mates that I'd known for probably nearly 20 years by this point. I met them when I was really, really small. So I had all these people that I could trust, good friends that I'd known for decades. And I started telling them one by one friend at a time. And the responses were very, very positive. You know, thank you for trusting me with this information, Jeremy. I can't believe it. If there's anything you need to support that we can help you with or to support you, or if you need to tell anyone else and you want me to come along, I just got brilliant responses to disclosures. So I continued doing that over 5 years, telling a friend, telling another friend, telling another friend. And then once I told all of them, I started telling their girlfriends and their wives. Then I started going to the parents of the boys that knew me back in those days, like my childhood days, and asking them, now that you know what happened to me, could you see that I was showing any signs? And I started doing all of this like crazy investigation online. And so I never had anybody try to put me down. I never had anybody disbelieve me. I never had anybody question me. I only
Hmm.
had people supporting me. And that led me to growing confidence with speaking about this.
Wow, that was fortunate. What about your parents? Did you speak to them or your other family members?
So it was always my aim to let my parents go to their grave, never finding out what had happened because they trusted this man and brought him into the house. And as a parent, which I'm going to be soon, I'm pretty sure I will understand this even deeper. You will feel like you failed your children. And I didn't want my parents to go through that because none of this is anyone's fault except for the man that did it. No one's fault. No one missed anything. No one was not taking undue care. Like everybody was doing their thing. This just went under the radar.
Were your parents still alive when you were telling all your friends and those? You weren't afraid of them finding out that way?
Well, it's funny because when I was telling my friends, I told everybody that I told to like it must be kept a secret. And the common question was, have you told your parents yet? And my answer was no. It was only when at 32 years old when I decided to prosecute this man or attempt to prosecute this man that when the police got involved, they needed statements from my parents, and that's when I had to tell them.
Okay. And so they didn't get to take it to their graves. What was their reaction?
Horror, disbelief, regret, guilt, and every emotion that tears your life apart, and they will never recover. They will never recover from this.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that's a
Sad. It's sad, right? It's sad. It's sad for them. You know what? I sometimes think it's more sad for them than it is for me.
Mhm.
Because when I told them, I'd been handling this for 7 years by that point, 2 years trying to push the memories away, and 5 years telling my friends little bit by little bit, getting more confident with the story, accepting what had happened, trying to investigate it online. And then when I tell them, it will never be normal for them. It will never be normal for them. And now they can't get away from it because I'm online and,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's especially tough for parents because in their eyes, you're always their child. They want to
Yeah.
care for you. They want to nurture you. They want to always be there for you and
Protect you.
protect you.
Yeah.
And, I remember when I told my parents and they were just absolutely devastated, but that same
Yeah.
reminder of this isn't your fault. I'm not telling you because I want you to feel guilty. I'm telling you because I want you to understand who I am
Yeah.
and see me more wholly.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
tough.
And you wouldn't believe, I'm getting more and more messages from parents, because we forget that for every child that's been abused, there are two parents in the equation too. And if they were both in the house while that child was being groomed and abused, they got groomed too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no platforms talking. We talk about victims only, and rightly so. Rightly so. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, but there are. Look, sexual abuse doesn't just affect the person that it happens to. It affects everybody that's close. So everybody that gets caught in the crossfire are victims. And I hope to make more content supporting parents who are literally, they don't know what to do with themselves, in particular mothers.
That motherly guilt, it comes swinging
Oh my
hard.
goodness. My
Yeah.
goodness.
So you're sharing your stories, you're beginning to speak out, and there's this piece where you start talking about begin to speak out by going to open mic nights at clubs.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's quite a story. Could you fill us in a little bit about that?
You know what? Where the hell did I think of that idea? Like where did that come from?
The human mind is truly creative.
It's it's like, was I thinking, how am I going to get the story out there? What have I got immediate access to? Because I knew I wanted to take my story public. I had that at that point when I made that decision was around the time that I went for the prosecution attempt against him, and was around the time that I actually quit my engineering career, thinking I could actually do something with this. And so this all happened in conjunction with each other, all these major redirections of my life. And taking my story public was going to be okay on social media. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to get in front of live audiences. And I think the reason why I wanted to do that so desperately is because I wanted to see like what are the reactions of people. Because you got to remember, it's not like I studied this or I've researched this. I was just somebody new to the space. And I'd been to an open mic night 2 weeks before this thought of taking my story public on open mic nights. And I went to like some poetry night. I'd never been to an open mic night before. I thought that is the perfect space. And it was the craziest journey. I must have done about 100 events over about a year and a half. I was speaking 3 times a week sometimes, traveling from one place to the next. And sometimes you would get the most amazing reactions because you get 5 minutes on stage, right, to do what you want, read a poem, sing, play an instrument. And I thought I could go as a storyteller. So I started trying to piece my story together, like the main parts and what's the message going to be. And then I'd do a couple of nights and then I'd be like, oh, I wonder if I take that bit at the end and put it at the start. I wonder if that's going to be more effective. And it was just going so well. It's like the best engineering problem. How can I get everyone in the audience to pay attention to a topic that they don't want to pay attention to? That was the brief. Where's the solution? It's like, yeah, I mean, it was the perfect engineering problem. But an added problem was, of course, the taboo and stigma of this topic. So sometimes I'd go to events and they were in like pubs or busy cocktail bars in the center of London. Everyone's chatting, people are getting up and moving. It's usually comedians or musicians. And then I'm going there with this. And I had some events like cut my microphone halfway through. I had one guy stand up and start shouting at me. But I just knew that this was my first kind of pathway to upskilling myself with talking about this topic.
I'm surprised that they didn't blackball you or send a message to all the clubs and say, watch out for this guy because right in the middle of somebody getting up and doing karaoke, he's going to come up and talk about being abused as a child. It just blew my mind that you did that. Honestly, it was like the courage that you had to get up and do that is just amazing. I mean, some people would just say you're crazy. I see it as incredible courage because I just can't even imagine getting up and doing that in front of people. There is a comedian out, I forget his name, but he's an abuse survivor and he does a comedy routine about it. But you were not doing comedy, you were telling it like it is, and 100 clubs. It's just incredible, Jeremy. I just can't even fathom that.
Thank you. And by the way, for anybody that's listening, if you go to my YouTube channel, click videos and click the filter oldest,
Yeah,
you're going to see all of those recordings and you see
yeah.
how nervous I am whilst trying to talk to the general public about this.
But you figured out that must be a better way to get your message out. And you know, what happened then? You came to an epiphany, or somebody told you, hey, look, Jeremy, you're running out of clubs. You need a different way.
Well, actually, what ended up happening was COVID hit. So
Okay.
all the clubs shut down. And then I'm back to the drawing board thinking, right, okay, I just was building incredible momentum. I was recording my performances on my mobile phone and uploading them to social media. I didn't really do social media before all of this. But I learned about Instagram and all the rest of them and started uploading these videos. And I started writing posts about how I was feeling at the time. And I started reporting on my journey trying to get this man prosecuted as well. So the whole thing started to become multifaceted. So I'd done all of these open mic nights. I'd really upskilled myself through that process, finding out where the boundaries are, what's too far for people to hear, what's not. I started writing these social media posts online. And then I started getting connected with other creatives like filmmakers, like amateur filmmakers. And they'd send me on Instagram and they wanted to do work together. We started to put together these short films. And then this thing started building layer upon layer. But by this point, let's say I'm about 2 years in. I haven't worked for 2 years by this point because I quit my engineering job. Now, I had good life savings in my bank that I collected over the years, and I started to use those. Now, I was staying at friends and family's houses to keep my accommodation costs at zero. That was helping. They were feeding me, and everybody was chipping in with helping, but people were so worried. Friends, family, what are you do? What are you going to do with this though? Like what you're doing out there is great, Jeremy, but you need to earn some money. Like this isn't going to sustain you forever. Why don't you just go back to your engineering job where I was designing supercars for McLaren? So it was a prestigious career, very nice lifestyle. Why don't you go back to that engineering job and just do this on the side? I just thought, no, I just know there's a way to make this sustainable, turn it into a job, and really just communicate this topic in a way that it's never been communicated before. And that is, I believe, looking back 2 years in when I had like, I don't know, 700 Instagram followers. I think I was naive to think how quickly I could try and do this. And I needed that naivety because if I thought about this seriously, I would have gone straight back to engineering and been like, that is going to take way too much time and hard work. And there's way too much risk in it. So, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's so interesting to hear just as you are working, as you're finding your conviction of I have to follow this idea. Something about this idea just has to work. A lot of things seem to be coming together for you, where you're meeting amateur filmmakers, or you're putting out this really creative content and different things like that. And that's pretty fascinating to hear. When you say you had a very successful career, and how does speaking out against that, publishing content, like how does that all affect your previous professional life, your own personal life? What are some of the ramifications there?
Well, I think as far as previous engineering life, I've been too far. I'm too far out of engineering now to probably return at any type of level. I've been doing this for 5.5 years now. So, but that engineering career doesn't really mean anything to me anymore. I had a great one, 15 years long it spanned. This is so much more important. And as far as personal life goes, this is so tough. This is tough to handle because I can't stop thinking about what's next, what we're trying to build. We're launching new live events. We're trying to get into schools. We've managed to get into some schools. We've got this Something to Say platform in the background running, helping others to share their stories. I'm trying to juggle all of this together, and money is still a massive issue here because some schools are reluctant to book me. I'm trying to work out how I can get a sustainable income from this. So it is a juggling act, a constant juggling act, but I don't think I'd have it any other way.
You know, we've talked to people. I'm curious because we've talked to people in the Black community who are survivors, and they said there was a definite cultural stigma to coming forward and to being a survivor. Was there a cultural stigma for you?
My family heritage is Sri Lankan, so this is not spoken about in those communities. It's not spoken about here in England, right? But in those communities, even more so. But I didn't have any kickback because all my friends are English. So I'm from a very multicultural, little bit, I suppose, but mostly English people around me. So I didn't get that community stigma holding me down. So that's something. But I do want to take this international. Like I want to create some kind of show and go on tour with it. And I predict that when you get to places in my knowledge where I know there is more stigma than others, when I get to places like India, I mean, nobody's going to book me.
Mhm.
Yeah. I feel like I'm going to start feeling the different
It'll be
levels of
worse than
stigma.
the open mic nights, I
Yeah,
suspect.
yeah. I reckon so. I reckon they just won't want me doing it. Like, they'd never have me into a school, for
Mhm.
example. But I know that my work is now in India, just using that country as an example. So, if I can
Yeah,
try and do it in a way that isn't all about sexual abuse, this is what I need to try to figure out how to do. So Netflix, right? Baby Reindeer. I don't know whether you've seen that or not.
yes. Mhm.
Okay, so on the news, everybody that's reporting about Baby Reindeer is talking about the stalking.
Yeah.
Right, the stalking is the story A. Story B is the sexual assault, the rape, etc., and
Mhm.
how his life unfolded following that incident. But the stalking has taken the headlines,
Yep.
right? Now that shows how behind the times we are with society, because the biggest moment of that series and that led us to understand him more was the rape.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to talk about the rape because they're scared of it. But he managed to get that content out there almost disguised with the stalking. So
Mhm.
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like,
I actually met the producer
oh,
of that program a couple of weeks ago, and I told him that. I said, I thought he said it's a show about stalking. Have you seen it? And I said, no, it's a show about rape, adult rape, and of a male. And he said, yes, but that's not what's being talked about. And I said, but it should, shouldn't it? And he just
mm.
didn't know what to say to me. It was a Hollywood party, and it just wasn't probably the right time. I told him I was a survivor at that point, and he just
Mm.
found somebody else to talk to. But Brianna, you mentioned Sri Lanka. Brianna Redmond, who's our founder of Voices Beyond Assault, she is doing some work in Sri Lanka, and she said that there's a huge need in Sri Lanka, that there's a lot of child abuse going on there. So I think that's an area. I think there's a lot of places in the world when we've done interviews with people in New Zealand and Australia, and there's a lot of places in the world, every place in the world. I mean, I used to think this didn't happen to anyone but me, as we all did, right?
Yeah.
But we're finding that.
And something that's just come into my mind as you said that, as you mentioned, that this is like in every country, in every community. It's not. It doesn't matter about race, economic background. It doesn't care about any of that. I've seen recently a couple of articles being printed in England about teachers being predators themselves, and a couple of teachers have been caught with indecent, illegal images on their computer, and it's all the headlines. And my response, where people are so shocked, oh my goodness, a teacher has illegal images on their computer, and I'm like, do you think there's like 1 in 10,000 people are like offending? It's like there's so many offenders out there. They're in every job. I feel like that highlights to me that people still think that somebody who would carry out an offense like this are second to, like they're only here or there. No, they're most places, right? They're in law, they're in the police, they are teachers. There are some in every job role. So I feel like, yeah, maybe society is not ready to accept the frequency that this is going on.
It's a pretty harrowing realization to like open your eyes to like, wow, we have truly, truly failed in so many ways, not only to take care of each other, but also the children that we're raising for the next generation as well. And I think that's a very difficult truth for a lot of people to swallow and to admit to, but ultimately one that is so necessary if we are to move forward and to build something better for the future.
Absolutely.
And you know, that's hopefully some of the work that we're doing here today together and opening people's eyes to that. One of the things that you did when you were 33, you went to your abuser and you confronted him. Tell us about that.
I felt so angry that my prosecution attempt against him failed due to lack of evidence. And when we talk about lack of evidence in these historic cases, we're so angry. But for me personally, my answer to that is there needs to be some evidence, and there is no evidence. So we can't start putting people in jail because I said something about someone. There has to be proof. We wouldn't want it any other way, right? So yes, okay, these historic cases, we're so frustrated when there's a lack of evidence and they're not going through, but that is the fact of the matter. When things are happening in the 90s, there is no record. So I was still so angry and frustrated at this situation that I decided that I wanted to confront him to his face and let him know that what he did will never be forgotten, and that if he's still doing it to more children, then he'd better think twice. Because I do think things are changing. I do think that society is changing with this, and people are feeling braver to come forward than ever before. And so I did go find out where he lived, and I knocked on his door. The police were called. They arrived, I was arrested, and he managed to take me to court for stalking, harassment, and assault. The assault was not because I was being violent. The assault was because I left the red mark on his chest when I pushed the door open, stopping him to slam it in my face. And he managed to get me found guilty for the assault, not guilty for the stalking and harassment, thankfully, because those two crimes considered very seriously in this country. And then I end up with a criminal record, which I still carry around now. Now, again, much like when we talked about my naivety in the first 2 years of me doing this on the open mic nights, I feel like I had a naivety around the whole knocking on his door thing too. Because really, if I thought about that today with my knowledge today, I mean, I would just never do that. I would never to go knock on his door, because I don't know what attitude he's going to have when he answers. I don't know how I'm going to feel when he answers. I don't know if that's going to get out of hand. And of course, there is an element of it where I'm kind of possibly taking the law into my own hands. But I did it, and it felt incredible. And the power was all mine. He was scared, frightened, didn't know what to say, shocked. And I had the door held open, and I just told him everything that I wanted to tell him. Now, when I go into schools and I talk about this part of the story, I make a big point that I am not trying to promote anyone going around knocking on anybody's door. I wouldn't do that today. I got lucky that nothing got out of hand. I got lucky that there was not violence from either side. I got lucky that I stayed calm at that door. But I feel like it's about time that we make a stand
Yeah.
against these people, because otherwise we're folding over all the time, and they seem to be the ones that just walk around free. And I don't think that's a good way forward.
Yeah, I mean, what's happened to your perpetrator? He has he had a family, right? He had a wife and
Yeah,
kids,
wife and two
and
kids.
you don't know if he's abused any other
Of course
children
not.
or
No.
not. Um, what's going on with him today? Do you know
So
anything?
I cannot do anything about him anymore because I left the court with a restriction order and a strong talking to that if you do anything from here, you're in big trouble. So I would never try to push that again, because that would just not be sensible of me to do that. What I am waiting for is for someone else to come forward, because my accusation against him in my original prosecution attempt against him is on file. That will live on file forever. So for anybody that has ever reported the abuse that they went through, sexual abuse that they went through, and it was a not guilty verdict or it didn't even make court, just know that you still did great work, because the police and your abuser's name is now highlighted in the
Mm.
police system.
Are
So
you
if
able
any,
to say his name, or is
no,
that
I'm not.
restricted as well?
Yeah,
So rarely does a perpetrator only abuse one child.
yeah.
So you are hoping constantly, probably, for someone else to come forward
I'm
and make.
hoping for someone else to come forward, and then we can just link that, and then that becomes strong evidence. When two people from different circles accuse the same person, that is where the strong evidence comes in. Now, look, there is another idea where I could open a civil case, right, which is a private prosecution, but I've been
Mhm.
told that's in the hundreds of thousands of pounds. And a lot of people have replied to me on my social media saying, get a GoFundMe for it. Right? Just put together a GoFundMe and we'll all support. But I don't want people's hard-earned money to go on a private prosecution that may not even be successful. So I'm just seeing what my options are. I don't want this to be the end of the pursuit of him, because he should recognize what he did, and we should be monitoring to make sure he can't do it to anyone else.
So I guess I want to ask also, now that you have confronted him, you learn a lot from this experience, you have a lot of reactions and experiences and lessons that you can take away from law enforcement, from the court. What are kind of some of those things that you had taken away from that?
During my prosecution attempt against him, I learned something. In my experience with what I saw, the police, the majority of the police, are trying their absolute hardest to get these convictions, but their hands are tied by the law. Their hands are tied by the processes and procedures that are put upon them. The police officer that was dealing with me looked exhausted, sad, and frustrated. He said that he had more cases on his desk than he can hardly handle, and they've got constant funding cuts. So they can't manage they can't even do their job properly. And I always say, like, my hat goes off to those police officers, those social workers, those prison guards who deal with this crime in whatever, from whatever angle. Because could you imagine waking up every morning and going to work, having to question predators and look through images and videos that have been created by that person to try to get them in court? Like, that must be horrendous. And then you're expected at 5 p.m. to like clock off and go back to your normal life, like like your day was good at work. You know, you're constantly telling survivors that they can't do nothing. You're trying to interview children if you've managed to catch it that early. I learned from going through this prosecution, where I tried to prosecute him and he prosecuted me, that so much change is needed, but there are some great people out there trying to work great jobs to help us get prosecutions.
Wow, that's great, and you're doing that work. I want to ask you, because some of your videos, and I just have to point a couple out, are quite amazing. There was a video that you have as the first video where a perpetrator is grooming a little girl while you're in the police officers and trying to get his attention on your story. That is very powerful. There is also an animated film that you did that is also incredible. And then the other one I want to point out is the animated one and the one where you just tell your story, and the one where you talk about going to the perpetrator's house is quite. These are all I recommend people to go to your site and they'll see this on the screen and go and listen to some of these stories. How do you get all this information that you have in your head about it? Because you're not a trained therapist or a psychologist or anything. And did you go to therapy? I mean, how did you amass all of this incredible ability to be of help to survivors?
Because I'm trying to solve the puzzle of how we can get this onto everybody's table. How can I catch the attention, not of just people that have been through it, not just of people who work within this field, but your average mother, your average father, your average teenager? How am I going to do that? And that is what drives the creativity. Because if I write formal posts, educational posts, they are good, and I do that sometimes. But how am I going to do what Baby Reindeer has done? Got the whole world talking. That is where that creativity comes from. That's why the video of me knocking on his door, which was made like maybe 4 years ago now. Oh my goodness, thinking about it now, it's just me and a lad that I met on the bus, and he had a camera, and we got chatting, and I told him what he was doing, and he was young and wanting to do something. We didn't even have microphones, but it's still so powerful because it's told in story form, because we're so hooked to the narrative. Like, that's why we love films. That's why the one of me speaking on the bench telling my story is raw, and of course the one that you mentioned with the actors. This is going to be a way forward, and it's always about me just trying to think about where the misunderstandings are. Let me give you an example. As I started speaking more and more about this, more people that I came across, one of the most common things that somebody would say to me is, it's going to be so good when you can forget about this and move on. Now, that's actually quite offensive, because for me, receiving those words shows me that you are not understanding that effect that trauma can have on someone's brain, in particular when it's carried out in childhood. But I'm not mad at that person, because the more I started hearing about that, I was like, this isn't ignorance. This is a common thing where people are thinking this is something you can just pick up, put to the side, and keep walking on. So I'm like, right, how am I going to be able to show them that actually something that happens in your childhood that's so traumatic sticks with you forever, and you start thinking about it in different ways as the decades go on? You can't just let it go. And then that will spark an idea for a video. So if I can talk about this, or if I can talk about it like that, then I'll get with the creators and we'll start brainstorming, right, and writing ideas down. Then we get people come in and help us put it onto screen, and that's where it all comes from. It comes from the pain, the pain of situations. That's where it comes from.
I basically took away two things from what you just said. One is because you're an engineer. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
And two,
Which is, by the way, I mean, most of the time engineers are left brain, and you're doing work that's creative and right brain. It's like it's an interesting,
Yeah.
interesting combination. You
Yeah.
must use both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lorward.
But your problem solving is oriented towards a solution. You have a solution that you want to achieve. You say, I want to achieve this thing. How do I get there? Right? You're not saying like, I want to fix everything. You say, how do I fix this misunderstanding? You specified it very clearly, which I think is really, really important for a lot of us to do, is saying, like, when we say we want to tackle this problem, what part of this problem are we trying to tackle? How can we get so specific and narrow in on that and focus all our attention, which seems like what you're doing. And I think that's an amazing lesson for anyone to take away when they're dealing with anything.
Yeah, I think it's when you see something happen time and time again when you're in this space, and it's really annoying me, or it's frustrating me, or I'm thinking about it first thing in the morning, that's the thing that I need to address. So yeah, engineer through and through, I think.
It's a fantastic quality to have, something I think everyone could probably use a little bit more of. I want to ask you, what is the video that you're the most proud of?
So it is this short film that we made with the actors, because there was a team of about 15 people that worked on it. Everybody worked under voluntary arrangement, even though they were all self-employed um, artists in their own right. And the puzzle we were trying to solve with that one was answering this confusion from the general public of, but why didn't you tell your mum and dad when it was going on? I don't understand. If all of that was going on, surely you would have told someone. They're forgetting what it used to be like to be a child, what a child's mind is like at that time. And that's what we addressed in the short film, to show that actually sometimes in some sexual abuse situations, the perpetrator you're okay with most of the time. Maybe it's an uncle. He's pretty cool. He's actually quite funny. He plays all the games. He's good at football. But then behind closed doors, you do this thing that makes you feel uncomfortable. So how can I show that? How can I get every mother and father that watches that film, turn that off and go, we should probably speak to our little Johnny, or we should probably speak to our little Amanda about things like private areas. So hopefully the emotion that I take you on will lead to action.
So you do a lot of videos. You're very passionate. You're very direct, and you the idea is that you want to get, you have a lot of people watching these videos, and often I think that the people watching the videos are other survivors, but you really want to reach the other people. And how do we do that? How do you
Oh my
get
goodness.
to the people before they're abused, before their children are abused, before to really get to break through that? Because I mean, I don't know, do you feel the same way? I feel like everybody that's
Absolutely.
watching our videos are survivors, and that's great. We hope we can help them move on and heal, but how do we get to the other part?
It's the $1 million question. That's another thing that I'm always striving towards, how to get this outside of the survivor circles. Because I can write an inspirational post every morning, right? About healing, about trauma, about recovery, about speaking out, what I did, what I think's great. I can do that every morning. I can just write posts forever about that.
Mhm.
But survivors already know all of the information because they've either been through it, or maybe they even know somebody that's been through it. They know all the information. How do we get it outside of those survivor circles? That's the big question. That is a $1 million question with a society that doesn't want to talk about it. How are you going to create something like your movement? How are you going to create something where people go into work the next day and when they're making coffee, they're like, I saw this thing yesterday, right? It's about sexual abuse, but hold on. It was so interesting. You've got to see it. That's the attitude that we want, not, I just don't want to talk about it. I'm going to look the other way.
Right.
So
How
that's
do we
what we
do
try to
that? Yeah, that's the $1 million question. And that would be something that would definitely be amazing to attack. You want people to talk about it like they talk about cancer, like they
do.
talk about any
Climate change,
disease,
anything.
any problems.
Yeah.
I mean, things that have gotten through are, people, we're starting to talk more about bipolar disorder, other things, suicide, things like that. But we need, part of that also needs to be childhood sexual abuse that it's not talked about, but it's talked about around it, like, oh, we'll talk about trafficking, and there's a movie about trafficking, but it's not really talking about what happens to those girls and little boys who were trafficked.
Mm, mm.
That it's just mind-boggling when I hear you that yeah, how do we get that? How do we get people to talk about that?
But why? Why is it? Why are we in this situation where we can't talk about it? Like I often actually think, but why? What is it that's so um, uncomfortable for people? What is it in our body that's has such resistance to not talking about one of the crimes that's so prevalent? Um, I don't know. Is it because we feel a disgrace that it's happening and we're not doing enough about it? Is it because we don't want to associate sexual activity, abuse activity, sexual abuse activity with a child? We don't want to see those two things be put together. I don't know what it is. Is there a guilt that this is happening to children on our soil? Like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you were abused in the 90s. I was abused in the 70s, late 70s. And you know, that a lot longer ago than that. And people, it was right after the sexual revolution where everybody talked about sex, but they wouldn't talk about childhood sexual
Yeah.
abuse, right? They didn't really talk about rape. They didn't really talk about those things either. In all fairness, that didn't happen a lot until the Me Too movement, moved this forward in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's a conundrum.
So are we going to be able to get somewhere a lot closer with introducing this conversation in the online sphere, meaning um, showing people the true danger and threat that we now have with children constantly being online? And I'm not saying that we should stop all children from being online. I don't think that's realistic. We have to move with the technology. What I'm saying is, it really gets parents' attention when I start saying things like, before the internet, somebody that wanted to do harm to a child had to find a child and groom them in person. Now somebody can sit behind their computer screen and send 200 or 300 messages on an Xbox Live game using an AI software that's read everything that child is interested in and tailors a message for that child, and they can address 200 or 300 children in one go,
It's
whilst
scary.
you don't know what's going on in that bedroom while that child is playing the computer. And to add another complication into the conversation, that child is not going to tell you if something goes wrong on his Xbox or her Xbox, because they don't want the Xbox taken away, right? So then I see parents' eyes be like, oh, because that makes it feel like that could happen to my child.
Hmm.
But the sexual abuse of a child feels like that would never happen to my child still. So maybe we just need to, yeah, we just need to keep trying things. She's constantly trying things
Yeah.
until something sticks.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying, you really want the focus and impetus for action to lie upon parents to protect their children. Would that be fair to say, more than schools, more than governments, more than any other institution, it's the parents who are responsible? Would you say that?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I've just recently had a conversation with somebody after one of my events about this, and he was actually a teacher. And he said one of the big frustrations with schools across the board is that parents aren't playing their part too. So
Mm.
kids are being learnt things in schools and they need them reinforced in the home, but parents don't want to go there because they don't want to talk to their children about this topic, and they're busy. So actually, yeah, I suppose parents are a massive focus to me. And if they're going to watch one of my videos and see the urgency of this, just simple education, that's going to be good. If I could get them to come to my events, that's also going to be good. And that's just one of my big plans. Yeah.
So you've interviewed some amazing guests and dealt with topics that most people wouldn't touch and you wouldn't have the courage to get close to addressing. And I think this is important because this is how you get people to start talking about it. But one of the programs, or a couple of the programs you have done, they deal with perpetrators. They
Right.
deal with the actual abuser. You try to understand them. Is pedophilia in your brain? I think is one of the
Yeah.
programs that I saw. Finding new ways to keep them from abusing. Again, you even talk about in one of your podcasts about getting them a blow up doll
Yeah.
that they can have incredible ideas that would probably throw most people in a, completely in a panic. Uh, what are some of the ways you think we should approach perpetrators, and why do you think it's important that we focus on them at all?
It's the most important thing for us to do, because we can educate children on private areas and body awareness every day for their whole life. They're still going to, some are going to fall through the cracks. There's still a 13-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl that's going to get abused by a young man and be taken on a ride that she doesn't understand. there's always going to be a child that's going to be able to be groomed, even though we've educated them. And I think our celebration for education is correct. I think it's a great move forward, but I don't think we should get carried away like we are solving the problem and it's excellent, because it's not the best solution. Because educating children to tell us if something's going on is reactive. The thing has to have happened for them to tell us it's going on. And to put all the responsibility on children and teenagers' shoulders to protect themselves, that's not fair. They're having a childhood. It's us adults that need to sort this out. So let's go upstream a little. Where's the root of the problem? How do you actually stop this crime from happening in its entirety? You get to the people that are committing the crime before they commit the crime. Now, that's just logic. Now, I know that's going to make some people feel emotional, because they don't want any time spent on these people that commit these crimes, they say. But then I ask them, would you have liked a society that was addressing the person that abused you before they abused you back in those days? Probably yes. Would you have liked an open conversation on offending with the people that abused you before they abused you? The answer is going to be yes. But we have a very reactive, emotional, and I understand that. Of course I do. We're thinking about putting any time towards people that commit this crime. But we need to stop it from happening in the first place. So, something simple, which I think everybody can understand, is what are we doing with people once they're released from prison? Are we just saying, okay, you've served your prison sentence, now go off and live your next life, and we're going to sit here and have our fingers crossed that they never offend again? Is that good enough? Or are we just going to get angry when they reoffend again? But where were we? These people are ill-minded at the very least. They're psychotic. They're I don't want to use terms because it doesn't do me any favors, but they are people who we need to get to before they reoffend. And then you think, well, what happened before they went to prison, right? Let's say they offended at 25 years old. Who were they before they offended for the first time? Was there an opportunity to educate the public and how to resist offending or never offend? Or I don't have all the answers. But if we don't start talking about offenders, we're just going to continue talking to victims about their abuse, and we're never going to get to the source of the problem and stop the crime from happening in the first place. People hate me for this. I get so much anger when I release podcasts like this. But if I can bring on an officer talking about the common traits that they see in offenders, if I can bring on probation talking about what's going on in prisons, if I can bring on a scientist talking about the brain and what leads somebody to feel aroused by a child, and we can start to understand that, then we can really start to understand the problem.
There needs to be a holistic approach. We can't just say kids only, parents only. It's everyone, everywhere, addressing you all.
It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to protect a child. It can't just be a one-sided approach. We can't just think that education in schools is going to stop this crime. You're going to still see so many victims. There's 3 centers in this world for somebody to go to if they feel like they're going to offend. There's 3 centers in the world where somebody, if there is somebody that is like, I'm in trouble here, I feel like there's something in my head that I need help with. There's 3, one in Germany, one in Amsterdam, I believe, and I can't remember the third one.
Wow, that's amazing to think about. And, one of the ways we know that perpetrators they go to where they can get access to children as well. They go to the clergy, because that was wide open for so long. When I was a kid, that was wide open to go. That's a great way to meet kids, to find kids. They go into sports coaching, or they go into Boy Scouts or things like that. They will find a place. So is there an obligation also to close those opportunities like that? I mean, I know your abuse and my abuse both happened from people we knew, but a lot of abuse happens in the public eye.
Absolutely. And I mean, what we're going to do, we're going to start scanning everybody before they ever get a job. Like, that would be a task, wouldn't it? That would almost be impossible. We're going to start putting people through stringent questioning before they ever have a job where they're taking care of young people. I mean, that would be a nice system, heavily expensive and almost impossible to implement, I believe, as well. But I mean, I suppose in this country we have the DBS system. I forget what that acronym's for, but you have to get a certificate. It's an in-depth, enhanced check that will happen in your history before you can have be a teacher or a sports coach or something like that. So that's being implemented. But yes, you do have the offender who just doesn't give a damn. They're going to find the right job, right? And even if they go to prison, they don't care either. They're going to come out and keep doing that crime and try to get away with it the next time. You do have offenders like that. But I believe there's a spectrum here, because you're also going to have offenders that recognize what's in their head and that it's dangerous, and they would seek help if they needed to. You're going to get a portion of offenders that are going to be like that too. But check this out. You're also going to get a proportion of offenders who are still teenagers, and they're starting to watch things online that they know they shouldn't be, but they just can't give in to the temptation. Now, let's say a 15-year-old young boy started watching illegal images or videos online. He's 15 years old. What are we going to do with him? Put him in prison forever? Throw away the key? Call for the death sentence? I'm not sure you can do that with someone that young. Then do we start to look at that 15-year-old boy as somebody who can be changed or helped, or his urges be not acted on? Because when it's 15 years old, we have a different approach to when it's a 45-year-old man. It's a different outlook, isn't it?
Yeah. Mhm.
Right? Because for the 45-year-old man, we're happy to say bring the death sentence back. But for the 15-year-old boy, we're probably not going to do that, because it could be your son as well, right? Could easily be your son. They got taken down a rabbit hole on his pornography website, started getting really aroused by those particular videos, can't stop watching them now. But where the hell is he going to go? He's not going nowhere. He's not admitting this to no one. And then by the time he's 21, he's out of control. So there's a big conversation to be had around offenders, especially when I try to detail that there's this spectrum of people. Anyone that abuses a child, I just want to say, anyone that sexually abuses a child is wrong. Period. It's a crime, it's illegal, and it affects a life. We don't accept it. But how are we going to handle this moving forward? Because we can't lock everyone up. We can't hand the death sentence out to everyone. That's just knee-jerk emotional reactions. We need to start thinking a bit more logically about this.
Yeah, why do you think you're getting so much? Why do you think you're getting all the hate mail when you put programs out about perpetrators and finding out what makes them tick and how we can deal with them? Do you think it's because of not having the education, or do you not being educated on this issue like you just did with us, or is it they're afraid to deal with it?
I think the people that get the most angry with me are so hurt by the sexual abuse that they went through, by the person that did it to them. They don't want to think about anything to do with anything outside of their pure evil and deserve to die. They don't want to think outside of any of that. And that I understand. It's traumatic to think of these people, that we need to work with these people in any regard. People are you would not believe how angry people get when I try to open this conversation. You know, I've had messages calling me a paedophile. You must be one of them if you're supporting them. And I'm like, you're completely misunderstanding your point. I need to work harder at being more creative to get people to see this content and be like, I don't like what he's saying, but he's got a point. A third of all sexual abuse to minors carried out by other minors. What are we going to do about that? Kill them all? No.
That was me included, by the way.
Right. Okay. Okay. So where these situations are truly complex. Now in this country, I don't know what's about yours, but the language is starting to be changed. Now this is truly interesting and complicated. The language here is being changed. If a minor carries out a sexual assault, molestation, or any other kind of act of that level on another minor, we don't call it sexual abuse anymore. We call it harmful sexual behavior. Say that young person committed harmful sexual behavior. We don't call it sexual abuse, and we don't call them a predator or an offender. We don't even call them an offender. So for minors, the language has been changed. And in some respects, the language has been softened. Now, I can see why those changes have been made, but it's so complicated because what do you tell the person who it happened to? You know, what do we tell the 15-year-old girl who got abused by the 15-year-old boy? I know I'm taking gender stereotypes there, but let's just use that for the use of this example. What do we tell the 15-year-old girl who it happened to? We're not going to call that person an offender, and it's harmful sexual behavior. Not like that's terrible for a victim to hear. But like, I don't know. Like we are in the beginning. I feel like we are in the beginning of all of this. We in our lives are witnessing the very beginning of these conversations because we're still, even though I have like some of the most renowned researchers onto my podcast, they are still working it out.
Yeah.
We're trying to recognize the humanity and the changeability of someone who has deeply wronged us. And that is like against our instincts. That's not what we want to do. You know, someone cuts you off on the road. You don't think, oh, this person's having a tough day. You think this person is the worst driver on the road. They're a pig. They're so dumb. How could they ever get their license? But we're trying to say this person who like fundamentally may have changed the course of your life and the way that you think about yourself still has the opportunity to become someone else. And it's like trying to get people to embody that message is like unbelievably difficult.
So I've worked out that saying that somebody can change is a recipe for bad news. People hate that, right? Saying that there's some kind of cure is recipe for bad news. People hate that. What I've reworded it as is maximizing the chance that they won't do it again. That's what we're after.
That's that engineer brain right there.
Right.
That's,
so it's different then,
that's the
isn't it?
message. That's the message.
Yeah.
That's you just nailed it. Yeah.
Maximizing the chance that they never offend again. So that's what we're aiming for, because I speak for myself here. What happened to me has happened. It's over. It's not happening anymore. I'm not in that sexual abuse situation anymore. That man is not a threat to me anymore. That situation is over. I am now living my life in the most productive ways that I can. Good friends, good ambitions, good missions, purposeful movements, etc. Taking care of myself. Now, the priority is today's generation. I'm not the priority in this story anymore. Today's generation is the priority because that's what we wanted the adults to be like when we were kids.
Yep. And I think maximizing the chances that an offender will not offend again, you have to do that in order to maximize the chances that no one will offend in the first place, because you'll learn a lot about people and why they do it and how to prevent it and how to talk about it at a very young age so that people know it's wrong and you have less chance of it happening in the first place. And it's an amazing goal you have, Jeremy. I really hope you can. It's amazing.
It will never be achieved. It will never be achieved because there'll always be the next level of creativity. It's like music. Music's never finished. I mean, music's been going on for eternity and there's still new music coming out because people are always pushing the boundaries, thinking of new ways of doing things, creating new genres, creating new ways to put a song together. Like that's infinite. That will never finish. And this is the same. So that when I'm old and grey and I'm tired, right, I can hand something to say to the next generations and they can continue it for the world that they live in. So even though I say, yeah, okay, so I deal with this subject every day, I've drastically changed my lifestyle to accommodate building this, I am so lucky in the way that I have this problem that that we can get so innovative with forever. It's never going to get boring, and it's inspiring people, and it inspires me, and that's just such a great opportunity.
You're working to build a better future. That's exactly,
Yeah.
you nailed it. Like the work is never
And
done.
what better medicine is there for, what better therapy is there but to use your story for some good for future generations?
Yep.
That's the ultimate medicine. No tablet, no pill, no therapy session can give you a better dose of healing than that,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, you take that pain and you make it purpose. And that's that metamorphosis that you want to go through.
It's antidote.
Yep. Your website is called Say Something to Say.
Yeah.
And you are certainly saying a lot of things. And I think we've talked about a lot of frustrating aspects of kind of the work that we do, some of the challenges that we run into. Is there something in particular that you're like, man, this is particularly difficult for me?
So I'm slowly but surely managing to get schools to take me seriously and take the chance on me, because everything's going to be okay. I've been working at this relentlessly for 5.5 years. I'm as clever as I can, as careful as I can be with my words. I never push the boundaries too far. I understand if I'm talking to ages 12 to 13, how that needs to be different to talking to ages 16 to 17. But I still get so much resistance from schools. I believe that they're worried about what the parents may say. They'd rather stick to the curriculum. They don't know who in the audience is going to be, how many disclosures they're going to have once I leave. There's fear across the board. I'm trying to get them to understand there's no need to have fear. This is an inspiring and empowering, informative, and educational talk that I give. But literally, when I first started knocking on the doors of schools, I must have sent 100 emails out a day, and sometimes you don't even get one reply. But as things build on my social media, I believe they're starting to take notice of me more. And most recently, I've decided that I'm actually going to not just wait around for schools to book me, because I could be waiting a long time, and I'm going to put my own live events on and start selling tickets to it. So that's going to be a new venture that I literally have started putting plans together in place for over the last 10 days.
You just said something that really struck me. You said they're afraid to have you speak. One of the reasons you said that they were afraid to have you speak is because they're afraid of how many disclosures they're going to get. Wouldn't they want to get these disclosures?
You would have thought so, wouldn't you? But when I speak to 1,250 students at an all boys school, for an example, I do that in one day, right? So I do each year group, starting age 11 to age 17. Think how many boys have been through something out of those 1,250 in-person abuse. Now you think about sextortion online, how many of them are watching things that they shouldn't be on their pornography websites. Think how many boys in that audience. And when it comes to sexual abuse in person that people have been through or going through right now, they are worried that they're going to get 30 kids come up to them and they're not going to know what the hell to do.
So they're going to be
I believe that is the
overwhelmed or
fear.
not have the tools to deal with it. I mean, or not have the resources to deal with it.
I think schools are doing an amazing job. I've sat in through loads of conferences now. They've got incredible processes and procedures. But what they don't want is for me to go in and trigger people. They're worried about making people sad. They're worried about upsetting people. So they'd rather just stick to the curriculum. But what's weird is, if they want to teach young people not to take drugs, the first person they bring in is somebody that's been addicted to drugs and has recovered and is telling their story.
Yeah.
The first person they want to speak to, especially to young boys, about don't pick up those knives, no knife crime, is somebody that stabbed someone, been to prison, has come out and is telling those young boys, don't do that. They're happy for the real life story then.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the stigma, right? The not talking about childhood sexual abuse. Yeah, it is weird. What is the reaction of these kids when you talk to them?
You should see them. You should see them. They can't get enough of it. Like when I go to the Q&A part, they're all putting their hands up, asking these questions. They're so involved. They are more ready for this discussion than us adults are. We just don't give them credit. They want to understand more. They want to know about what's going on in this world. And they're not afraid of that offender conversation either. I don't bring the offender conversation to the school. Sometimes in the Q&A, they want to know everything about the man that did this to me. They're interested. They're curious. They want to stay safe, but they don't want to do it in that usual classroom environment where it's, here are the 4 types of abuse. Here are the 7 signs of abuse. Here is the definition of trauma. They are so bored of all of that. It's unengaging, it's uninteresting, and they're not taking anything away from it. But what I do is I've broken my story up into 5 parts, and in between each part, I have a little video clip that I show them. I show them the film too. We open up for Q&A. We do some interactive activities together. And they are so engrossed. And I recently had a message from a mother who messaged me after I'd visited a school. And she said, I just wanted to let you know, my 11-year-old son, who's in the lowest year group in schools in this country, secondary schools that I speak to, he came home and just told me your story. And he says that he has never been so inspired. Now, if that child is someone that's never been through sexual abuse before, they are now more aware of a real life story of it. They're now more equipped to understand that if something weird starts to happen with them and someone else, that they can tell someone because they've just seen a grown man be vulnerable in front of them and show them that they can still build a successful life. They can still have successful careers, friendships, and that was valuable for them moving forward.
Well, the kids, they want to be engaged with the material. They want to ask questions. They want to see how it changes. They want to get their hands dirty with it. And sometimes I think we don't give kids enough credit for their ability to adapt to new information.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I speak to ages 11 and above, right? So in our grading system, that's year 7 and above. I haven't got anything for age groups younger. I'm still trying to work that out. Because when they get to 10, 9, 8, 7, they're different creatures. Yeah, that's a different world. And so what I've got currently is not suitable for them. I'm still trying to figure out.
Many of them are abused at that age, so you have to get to them, right?
Right. So you have to get to them. It's just how. Because I can't speak to the 15-year-olds the same. I wouldn't speak to 8-year-olds or 7-year-olds the same that I speak to 15-year-olds because they're at a different level. I don't mean like they're stupid at that age, at those younger ages. I mean, their world is different. So I've been thinking about turning my story into a superhero story that I tell in the 3rd person because they love superheroes. Yeah. They're glued to superheroes, especially the younger ages, or turn it into some kind of, not sci-fi. I don't have the right words for it, but a different universe of some sort where they can get all excited about it. And there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way.
Yeah. There's always a way to engage with the kids. Jeremy, you are doing a lot of things with your movement. You're doing a lot of things, sharing it with kids, moving things along, thinking about things in a different perspective. What's coming down the pipeline for you? What is you working on that gets you excited that you're like, I can take this further than where it is now?
So there's Something to Say platforms that I run, which is under Something to Say official on all social media accounts, including YouTube now. I started that because I got so much confidence through sharing my own story. I wanted to give a space for others to share too. Kicked that off in 2019. People started submitting their stories via a written format. We started sharing them. It's now become a place of resource. Every post that we put out on Something to Say is community driven, submitted by the community. We have videos, we have questions, we have discussions, and it's going phenomenally well. Now, I want that to turn into a household name. We've recently launched clothing off the back of it to help fund it all. And our most recent venture has been YouTube. So we thought, right, we're sharing stories via written format. Let's start sharing them via video too. It's going really well. We just started it maybe 6 months ago. And I just want this to, as I said, turn into a household name, because this will be the thing that will live on after I pass, the Something to Say movement. And me and the team that I've this strong team of volunteers. We laugh and we joke and we say, when will we know when that's happened? And we say, when we're sitting down and we look outside the window and we see a young person who wasn't even born when we started this wearing Something to Say clothing. Not maybe because it was about abuse, because it's about strength and encouragement and empowerment, which is what the movement's all about. Now, the other thing that I'd like to mention is these live events that I've now doing a lot of research into kicking off. I've just found 2 spaces where I can present for the first time. This is going to be good because people who want to come and see me talk are relying on either their organization or their school to book me. But here we can open this up for the general public. And we'll start small. I've got 2 spaces with 50 people maximum. We'll sell some tickets. Anyone can come. Now, what I want to turn this into as the years go on is I want to build layers upon layers on it. I'm always changing my presentation. So I want to have a pack that is on your chair when you sit down, some information. I want to bring music into it. I want to bring artistry into it. And I want to build it into some kind of show, even though show isn't probably the right word for it. But I want to build the layers upon it and then eventually be renting theatre halls. Thousands of people will be showing this. But to finish this off, this is what I want. So let's say I am in a big city like Birmingham here in the UK, and I'm doing 3 evenings. Maybe I'm doing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night at this theatre hall. What I want to do is during the day, I want to open it up for schools and say, right, you bring all of your students to 3,000 capacity. On Monday, I'm doing year 9s. Tuesday, I'm doing year 10s. Thursday, I'm doing year 11s. Bring the coaches, bring the kids in. So during the day, we're addressing the kids. And in the evening, we're addressing the adults. And we haven't got to wait for anybody to book me. We take the show to the people.
I want to ask you personal question. You're about to be a father to a son. Does that scare the hell out of you? How are you going to keep him safe?
I feel like I don't know what's about to hit me. And that's not with the parenting situation. That's because I'm going to see it I unconditionally love, and I'm going to understand what my father went through. Going to understand what my mother went through. Because I think I understand what they're going through. I ain't got a clue. When I've got my own son, I'm really going to see it. And then when my son starts to get to an age that I was when I was being abused, I'm going to feel tremendous sadness because I actually see how innocent I was in those ages. The challenges are coming, and there are challenges that are coming that are worse than what I'm going through right now. Like there are huge things on the horizon, but that's just life. I can't escape them all, right? It's just the way it is. And so I'm ready for them, and they're going to be tough and they're going to be challenging, but I will continue to express myself through my work, what I learn.
It's going to be quite a journey, weathering the storm, equipping your son, protecting him from harm, and everything else in between. But we're excited for you, and I'm sure it'll be quite the journey, and you'll learn so much from it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Jeremy, how can people help you if they help you in your mission?
Please go to jeremyindica.com. There's a donate button there if you'd like to contribute. Please go to somethingtosayofficial.com. There's clothing there available if you'd like to purchase. There's also a membership program which you can get involved in with the community. Just come and follow, come and support, come and share the posts, the ones that you feel are striking or informative. Come and see me if you're in this country. Come and see me at a live event. Just come and get involved in this discussion. This is not about every time you come across one of my posts, it being full of sadness and sorrow. That's not what I want. There's a mixture of emotions here. Sometimes we are celebrating, like today, if you go to my social media. Sometimes we have like making new moves. Like this is an adventure. Come and join it.
All right. Well, that's let's do it. If you're in the UK, look up Jeremy. But if you're not, go to his website, and we'll list all of that information after this program. We want to thank you again, Jeremy, for joining our program today and sharing your life's mission with us. You know, as a survivor myself, and I'm sure Lord feels the same way, we're personally grateful to you for all your incredible work and for making this such a forefront in your life.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me on to chat. I enjoyed the conversation. I thought it's always nice when we're not just talking about my story, we're actually talking about productive ways forward. That's always nice. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And we hope everyone watching that you found the discussion enlightening, comforting, and helpful with your healing process. Please go to our YouTube channels and all major podcast sites for this program, as well as other programs from Voices Beyond Assault.
Yes, and please send us your comments or leave your comments on this site. We really do value your input. There will be other information at the end of this program and ways to get in touch with Jeremy and his mission and ways to help as well. So thanks again to all of you survivors out there for your continued support of programs and organizations such as Voices Beyond Assault. It's your courage that gives us all strength.
Hands on my chin, I was lost and looking in the glass of time. Was it just the wine made me cry? I hope I'm satisfied. I saw myself, an older man, folding up his paper plans and hiding it in his hands. Made me say, am I